Every galactic prophet said the same thing. From the crystal monks of Aurelian to the blind oracles who floated inside black stars, the message never changed. Tonight, the human named Elias Rowan would die. The future was clear, fixed, and unavoidable. Across the galaxy, temples dimmed their lights, war fleets slowed their engines, and millions prepared to witness the end of a man they believed was essential to survival. Elias stood alone on the observation deck of the flagship Starlight Accord. Earth glowed beneath him, calm and blue, unaware that fate itself was gathering above it. The stars felt quiet, almost respectful, like they knew this night mattered more than most. Elias rested his hand against the glass, his reflection staring back with eyes far older than his body. He was not afraid. Behind him, footsteps echoed. Commander Vera approached, her silver armor catching the red warning lights that now pulsed softly through the ship. She was a warrior who had survived 100 battles, yet her shoulders were tense. The prophets confirmed it again, she said. Every vision ends the same way. You don't survive this night. Elias nodded slowly. I know. Vera frowned. That's it. No angel, no denial. He turned toward her and smiled faintly. Some things stop being shocking when you've seen them before. She studied his face. You speak like this has already happened. Elias looked past her, toward the stars. In a way it has. Years ago, years that no one remembered. Elias Rowan had been nothing special. He was an engineer, one of many humans sent into deep space to fix machines no one else understood. He wasn't born into prophecy or trained for war. He believed problems could be solved if you looked at them long enough. That belief led him to a forgotten moon near the edge of charted space. While repairing an old relay station, Elias discovered something buried beneath ancient stone. It was a machine, broken yet humming, older than any known civilization. Symbols covered its surface, symbols that seemed to move when no one looked directly at them. The moment Elias touched it, reality folded. He didn't travel through time. Time collapsed into him all at once. Futures slammed into his mind like crashing waves. He saw stars going dark, planets burning, entire civilizations erased as if they had never existed. He saw prophets screaming warnings too late. He saw a galaxy united, and still destroyed. At the center of every future stood the same figure. Himself. Dead. Again and again. The machine was a chronoanchor, built by a species that understood time not as a line, but as a battlefield. And in Elias it found something rare. A mind flexible enough to survive the truth. So it sent him back. In the first true timeline, Elias tried to change everything openly. He warned the great councils. He gave technology to young species. He united enemies who had hated each other for thousands of years. They called him a miracle. A chosen one. Some even called him a god. But the enemy noticed. It was known only as the Null Sovereign, a being that fed on erased futures. It learned. It adapted. Every time Elias changed events, the Sovereign countered, erasing entire timelines to maintain its dominance. No matter how hard Elias fought, the galaxy always fell. So he made a choice no prophet ever saw. Instead of saving himself, Elias saved everyone else. Using the chronoanchor one final time, he rewrote events subtly. He pushed discoveries forward by decades. He altered chance meetings. He ensured alliances formed without his presence. He erased his own victories, his own sacrifices, even his name from history. Then he let that timeline collapse. Elias survived, but only barely. And when he opened his eyes, he was in a new version of reality. A galaxy alive, stronger, united, and completely unaware that it had already been saved. Now, alarms echoed through the Starlight Accord. Red lights flashed brighter as space outside twisted unnaturally. Something vast was forcing its way into existence, bending reality like thin metal. They're here, Vera whispered. Across the galaxy, prophets screamed as their visions dissolved into darkness. For the first time, the future could not be seen, not because it ended, but because someone was hiding it. Elias stepped forward. Open a channel. You're walking toward your death, Vera said. Yes. And you're calm. Elias met her eyes. Because I already know what comes after. The channel opened. The void itself spoke, its voice pressing against the mind. You should not exist, the null sovereign hissed. I erased you once. Elias smiled, not tired this time but certain. You erased the wrong version. Outside, fleets prepared for a battle they believed would be their last. Elias took a slow breath as energy surged through the ship. Tonight, the galaxy believed he would die. They didn't know he had already paid that price. And come back to finish the job. Space screamed when the null sovereign fully emerged. The stars around it dimmed, not from shadow, but from absence, as if light itself refused to exist near the thing. The starlight accord shook violently, and distant fleets reported systems failing all at once. Shields flickered. Zenzoa slit. Reality bent in ways no equation could explain. Elias stood at the center of the command deck, calm amid the chaos. Officers shouted warnings, calling out impossible readings, but he barely heard them. His attention was fixed on the vast shape forming beyond the glass. He remembered this moment. Not exactly like this, but close enough to hurt. The null sovereign spoke again, its voice bypassing language and pressing directly into every mind aboard. This timeline should have collapsed. You interfered. I corrected, Elias replied evenly. You erase futures. I preserve them. You delay the inevitable, the sovereign said. Every path ends in silence. Elias closed his eyes. In another timeline he had argued. In another he had begged. In another, he had attacked without understanding. All of them failed. This time he did something different. He reached inward. The chrono-anchor was no longer a machine behind stone. It lived inside him now, woven into his thoughts, his memories, his very sense of time. Elias opened himself to it, not to travel, but to remember. Suddenly the command deck faded. He stood on a burning world from a lost future, holding a dying child who had asked him why the sky was falling. He stood in a council chamber where allies turned on each other because he arrived 1 second too late. He stood alone among ruins, staring at a victory that cost every life he tried to save. All those moments fed into him. Elias opened his eyes. Fire won't stop you, he said calmly. Neither will fleets. Commander Vera stared at him. Then what will? Truth, Elias answered. He raised his hand, and space itself responded. Across the galaxy, something impossible happened. Ancient satellites long thought dead powered on. Forgotten relics buried in dead systems began to hum. Devices that no one remembered building aligned, all pointing toward the same place. Toward Elias. The null sovereign recoiled. What have you done? I reminded the galaxy, Elias said. Not consciously. Just enough. Long before the current civilizations rose, the time-aware species that built the chrono-anchors left something behind. Not weapons but warnings. They knew entities like the null sovereign existed. They knew brute force would never work. So they designed the galaxy itself to resist. Probability shifted. Not sharply but gently, like water finding a new path. The null sovereign fed on futures that collapsed in panic and despair. It grew stronger when civilizations lost hope. Elias was doing the opposite. Every species felt it. A quiet certainty. A feeling they couldn't explain but trusted. Pilots steadied their hands. Leaders chose cooperation instead of fear. Old enemies synchronized their fleets without orders. The future didn't disappear. It stabilized. You cannot hide time from me forever, the sovereign hissed. I'm not hiding it, Elias replied. I'm anchoring it. The entity surged forward, tearing through space toward the starlight accord. Alarms blared. Shields failed completely. Vera rushed to Elias. We're out of time. He nodded. I know. This was the part no one else could do. Elias stepped onto the forward platform, energy roaring around him. The chrono-anchor burned inside his chest, brighter than it ever had before. Pain flooded him, but he didn't scream. He had screamed enough in other timelines. Instead he focused. The null sovereign struck. For an instant, Elias felt himself unravel. Every version of him, every life, every death pulled apart, exposed. The sovereign tried to erase him across all timelines at once. And failed. Because Elias wasn't standing in just one timeline anymore. He was standing between them. You can't kill me like this, Elias said through the agony. Because I'm not the threat. Then what are you? The sovereign demanded. Elias smiled sadly. I'm the proof. He released the memory he had been holding back, the one future he never allowed himself to think about. A timeline where the null sovereign succeeded completely, where it consumed so many futures that it starved. With nothing left to erase, it collapsed into nothingness. The sovereign felt it. Felt fear. That future is impossible, it screamed. It is, Elias agreed. Unless you're here. The chrono anchor flared, locking that possibility into place. The more the sovereign fought, the more it fed the very future that ended it. Space screamed again, but this time, it was the sovereign. Its form fractured, pulled apart by its own hunger. The void twisted inward, collapsing like a dying star. Elias fell to his knees as the pressure vanished. Silence followed. Stars returned to normal. Systems stabilized. Across the galaxy, fleets realized the enemy was gone. Not retreating, not hiding, but erased in the only way it could be. Vera caught Elias before he hit the floor. You did it, she whispered. Elias looked up at her, weak but smiling. No, he said. We did. His body began to glow faintly, light seeping through his skin like cracks in glass. The chrono anchor was burning out. He had known this would happen. You're dying, Vera said, voice breaking. Elias nodded. Yes. The prophets had been right. Just not in the way they thought. He looked toward the stars one last time, feeling the future settle into a single, steady path. Promise me something, he said quietly. Anything. Live like this was always your timeline. The light grew brighter. And Elias Rowan began to fade. The light did not explode. It softened. Elias Rowan faded in Vera's arms like a sunset, slow and quiet, leaving no shockwave, no final scream. One moment he was there, breathing, smiling faintly. And the next he was only warmth, then nothing at all. The chrono anchor's glow dissolved into harmless sparks that drifted through the air and vanished. Silence filled the command deck. Not the silence of fear, but the deep stillness that comes after a storm has finally passed. Vera lowered herself to the floor, still holding the empty space where Elias had been. Around her, officers stood frozen, unsure whether to cheer, cry, or kneel. Across the galaxy, sensors confirmed the impossible. The null sovereign was gone. Not hidden. Not dormant. Gone from every layer of reality they could measure. The prophets were the last to understand. Their visions returned slowly, cautiously, like eyes opening after blindness. Where once there had been endless endings, there was now only one future. Long, uncertain, but alive. And in that future, there was no sign of Elias Rowan. They searched for him in every possible way. They found nothing. Days passed. Then weeks. The galaxy healed. Worlds that had prepared for annihilation turned their war engines into tools of repair. Former enemies shared star charts and resources. Borders softened. Old grudges lost their meaning in the shadow of what almost was. Humanity became something new in the eyes of the stars. Not conquerors. Not saviors. Anchors. On Earth, people felt it without knowing why. A sense that the future was heavier now, more real. Children looked at the night sky and felt hope instead of fear. Engineers solved problems they had been stuck on for decades. Leaders chose patience where once they would have chosen power. No one remembered Elias. That was how he designed it. Only a few were left who carried fragments of the truth. Commander Vera was one of them. She resigned her command and vanished from public life. Years later, she stood alone on the forgotten moon where it had all begun. The ruins were quiet. The stone broken. The place where the chrono anchor once rested was now just a scar in the ground. Vera knelt and placed her hand on the cold surface. You kept your promise, she said softly. You gave us a future. The air stirred. For a brief moment, so brief she almost missed it, the stars above flickered out of sync. Time hesitated. And somewhere beyond measurement, Elias opened his eyes. He was not alive. Not in any normal sense. But he was not gone either. He existed as a boundary now. A fixed point the universe referenced without understanding. He could not move forward into the future, or back into the past. He simply was. And that was enough. Elias watched timelines flow past like rivers, each one stable, each one real. The galaxy no longer tore itself apart chasing endings. The null sovereign was gone because there was nothing left for it to feed on. Futures did not collapse in fear anymore. They unfolded slowly, imperfectly, beautifully. Elias felt no pain. No regret. Only relief. Far below, on a distant world, a young prophet gasped as a new vision formed. Not of death. Not of destruction. But of a quiet human shape standing between stars, holding the universe steady with open hands. The prophet fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. This future is protected, he whispered. Back on the Starlight Accord, now a museum ship, a small plaque had been added near the observation deck. It carried no name, only words simple and human. For the one who chose everyone. Visitors often paused there, feeling something they could not explain. A sense of gratitude without a source. A comfort that the universe, for all its danger, had been given a second chance. Time moved on. Generations passed. The galaxy expanded into regions once thought unreachable. New species rose. Old ones faded naturally, without erasure. History became something that flowed forward instead of resetting in fire. And through it all, the universe held. Because Elias Rowan still stood between moments. Every galactic prophet had said he would die that night. They were right. But they never saw the other truth. He didn't die to end the future. He died to make sure it finally had one.